Have you ever felt this overwhelming sense of guilt and anxiety when you have to go off to work and leave your kids behind? Hi, I'm Marcia Amaro, and I'm here to give you the tools that will empower you to bring your family to a place where everybody can thrive. And today, I want to talk specifically to moms, and even more specifically, to working moms. Now, if you're anything like me, you have probably experienced what I call mommy guilt, where you know you have to go off to work, but that process, that moment of leaving your kids to be taken care of by someone else while you go off and do your thing just tears your heart apart. It almost feels like you're trading your kids for money. I know for me, it's particularly a touchy subject because I leave my kids so I can go take care of other people's kids. And it feels unfair and it feels wrong at times. And I often wonder if what I'm doing is a disservice to my kids, if I'm harming them in some way. And I know that at some point, it might not be necessarily about that, but at some point or another, most of us experience this sense of guilt over how we're handling our parenting. And I want us to talk a little bit about that today and have a little bit of a heart-to-heart. The first thing I want us to consider in thinking about why we feel guilty is whose model are we following? Who are we looking at that we are comparing ourselves to, and in the process moving ourselves to this place of guilt? I know for me, and don't get me wrong, my mom is an amazing, outstanding woman that I want to model in 1.5 million different ways. But for me, the main source of guilt was knowing that my mom stayed home with us and I wasn't able to. And I know that my life was fabulous and my childhood was amazing because my mom was always there. That was one big factor that I feel made my life better and made my experience as a child and growing up and all these things less challenging maybe than it is for other people. I'm sorry. So I got into the space where I started comparing myself to my mom and to other moms that I know who were able to stay home and raise their kids without having to work outside of the home. And that filled me with this incredible sense of guilt. And like I said before, anytime I dropped my kids off, particularly when they were very little, and I dropped them off at daycare, I felt like I was trading my kids for money. Like I was trading the time and the energy and the effort and the focus and me away from them for a few bucks per hour. And that made me feel so horrible. But then I started to think, wait a minute, is it fair for me to compare my circumstances to my mom's? Is it the same set of needs? Is it the same goals? Do we have the same exact priorities? Is my husband in the same position my dad was at? And I started to separate what I thought was ideal to what was real for me and my family. And I understood that in that sense, I was looking at the wrong model. So when you start feeling this sense of guilt and this pain, this pang of, am I doing the right thing for my kids? Stop and ask yourself, am I comparing myself to someone? And if so, is that a fair comparison? Are these people in the exact same space that I'm at? Do we share the same goals? Do we have the same needs? Do our families have the same priorities? If not, stop and find new models to follow. The second thing is understanding why you're doing this in the first place. Simon Sinek is famous for his Start With Why series of books and workbooks and talks. There's a wonderful TED Talk if you want to look him up. But he says that any endeavor, and he focuses more on business, but any endeavor that you pursue, if you start with why, that will help you through the how and the what and all the other elements that come into it. It will also give you the strength and the focus to keep going when things get challenging and rough. And in our endeavor to be parents, in our desire to be the best parents that we can, and to bring our families to a space where everybody can thrive, we also need to understand our own why. And that is the second thing we need to really think about. So why are we doing these things that make us feel guilty at times? Are we doing them because it's a necessity? Are we doing them ultimately for our family? Or are we doing it for something that is really not that valuable, that is not really a priority? If the first is the reason, I know for me, working wasn't just about making money, even though it was. It was also about a sense of fulfillment and the fact that I can't be still doing nothing. And I know that moms that stay home do a lot. But I needed that sense of accomplishment, that sense of going out and earning something and doing something that was that had more reach than my family. And so teaching in particular for me was a calling, was something that filled me. So it was in part about being able to provide for my family, and that was really, really important. And honestly, that was the number one reason for me. If I didn't have a need to help provide for my family, I probably would have stayed home. But it was a necessity for our family to have that extra income, to have that other source of provision. So it was important, it was necessary. And that helped me start to understand that, look, we all need to make certain sacrifices, and they will in turn learn in time, and we will talk more about that in a second, but they will in time learn to be stronger because of it. So what's your why? Whatever it is that is causing you guilt, stop and think, why am I doing this? Is there a greater, grander purpose behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it? Is there another reason besides just because everybody else is doing it? Do I understand why it is important? If I do, then I need to remind myself that this is why. And if I don't, then maybe I can re-examine some things and reset some structures. But make sure you're clear on why you're doing it. So far we've talked about the importance of evaluating the models you are comparing yourself to and the models you're following, and thinking about your why. But before we get into the third thing that you need to think about so you can overcome this mommy guilt, I want you to stop for a minute and subscribe to my channel. If you have found value in all of this, if you have liked this, subscribe and go through my channel. I have tons of tips and ideas on how to empower you with the tools necessary to help your family thrive. So go ahead and subscribe, and let's go on to our third reason. And the third and final thing I hinted at a little bit earlier, but it's what kind of role model do you want to be for your kids? What kind of model and example do we want to set for the ones that we feel guilty about, whatever it is that we're doing, leaving them behind or whatever it is? I know in my case, I want my daughters to understand that they can add value, that they need to be contributing members of society in more ways than one. I want them to identify their passions and their strengths and the things that they have been gifted with, and I want them to know that they're using those talents and those abilities for the greater good, that they are contributing to the world in a way that will supersede their small reach or their small space, that they will impact other people's lives in a positive manner. And as a Christian, I want to know that I am modeling what the Lord has taught me to others around me, right? So ask yourself, what do you want to teach by your actions? What do you want your kids to learn? What do you want your kids to see? I know I want mine to look at me and see a strong woman who is determined and hardworking. I want them to learn the value of taking certain risks, and I want them to understand that the ultimate goal is to contribute, to give, and to love others. So, the next time you feel that sense of guilt as a mom over whatever it is that you're doing with your family, stop and think, evaluate. What is that model that you're comparing yourself to, and is that the best model in this instance for this circumstance? Second, make sure that you understand why you're doing it so that it can help you move past that challenge and that sense of overwhelm about doing what you need to do. And thirdly, think about the kind of role model that you want to be to your kids, the example that you're setting by these things that you're doing, and understand that they are looking to you for those models and those examples. You're doing an amazing job. You should be proud of yourself. I know your kids and your family are. Now, if you have found value in any of this, please make sure that you do subscribe to my channel. I have tons of tips, and I come on at least twice a week with new ideas and suggestions on how we can together be empowered with the tools to design a family that is set to succeed. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.